I'm Dave Lawrence, and thank you very much for listening. Today we are welcoming back legendary guitarist Jimmie Vaughan, who has strong connections to the islands. He was our guest several years ago, and at that time told us about studying steel guitar here in Honolulu with the late Jerry Bird. He's a guy who has collected and appreciated classic Hawaiian music and albums for a long time, played here quite a bit over the years, including with his late great little brother, Stevie Ray Vaughan. He's got a ferocious new record that came out earlier this year we're going to hear about called Baby Please Come Home. Continues a series of albums where he has explored music that has played a big role in his life. And he has some exciting gigs ahead for him, too. Of course, he is Tuesday and Wednesday, August 13th and 14th, 8 p.m. shows each night at the Blue Note, Hawaii, in Waikiki. He is going to be Saturday the 17th at the Kahilu Theater, and then Sunday the 18th, wrapping it up in Kona for his latest tour. And he's also got some of his biggest collaborators of his life he's worked with again this year, Eric Clapton, Buddy Guy, two of those guys. We'll hear about some of those shows. And this year also saw the release of the Jimmie Vaughan signature Stratocaster. We welcome him back to the show right now. Hey, my brother, thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure.
First, Jimmie, who are you bringing with you on this latest tour? Describe what we have coming.
Well, if anybody heard my album called the Jimmie Vaughan Trio, which was the CD that I came out right before this, I'm bringing Mike Flanagan on the B3 and our drummer Jason Corbier. So it's the trio that I'm bringing.
I'm assuming you're going to be digging deep into this record.
Well, we're going to do some of that stuff, and we're going to do stuff off of the last record, which was a little more. It was a live album recorded here in Austin, and so we're going to do a little bit of everything.
Now, for folks, as I was sort of mentioning in introducing you, explain how Baby Please Come Home fits in with the last several albums. It continues sort of a theme.
Yeah. Well, it's just I just do whatever I like when I play guitar with my group. So I basically try and play all my favorite songs, which constantly changes. And I'm always finding, something new, or it's new to me. So, this is, I like to think of it as art. You never run out of stuff to discover. I mean, if you're looking around all the time, I find new songs every day, new artists. It's all kind of in the same vein, but it's just incredible how much stuff there is to draw from, and it's really a lot of fun.
And the recording kind of captures it's seemingly analog retro sound too. Made me a little curious about how you did the recording, because sometimes it's hard to do that and get at that warm sound of yesteryear, but it feels like you pulled it off on this thing.
Yeah. Well, what I do is I go in the studio and I use all the latest stuff. Like we'll use digital, and we'll use all these things, but then at the end, after you mix it, and we use a lot of room miking too. So I don't put the microphone. If you go to school now, they teach you to put the microphone right up against the speaker, and all this modern stuff. It doesn't really work. So we use a lot of room miking techniques. And then at the end, we put it on tape before we send it to be mastered.
It totally reflects that. I was going to say, one of my statements was it sounds almost like just a pair of stereo mics, like a bootleg, like a really good bootleg in some ways.
Yeah. Well, that's what I like. So
you're pulling it off.
Well, thank you. I mean, it doesn't matter what song it is. If I'm going to record, I try to get a split. It's just you want to get the best possible sound. You don't want it to sound mic'd too close. You don't want it to be too dry. You don't want it to be digital sounding. You don't want it to be, So you try to make it sound good. Like it's a fabulous jukebox or something.
Yeah. No, it's cool like that. I totally dig what you're talking about. The sound of like Tough Enough.
Well, we did I did a lot of the same kind of stuff on that. So, if you, like I said, if you go to
recording school
nowadays, they'll show you where to put the mic on the cone of the speaker, and you know what I mean, all this stuff. We don't do any of that. We break all the rules, and we just try to make it sound good. So.
I like that. You know what's cool? I was looking at the lineup of cats that you cover, and we just had from Savoy Brown, we had Kim Simmons on the show, and he was talking about the Bill Doggett Band and how important that was when he was a youngster, and guitarist Billy Butler of that group he learned a lot from. And lo and behold, there on the record, you're covering Bill.
Yeah, absolutely. Billy Butler, what a great musician, that whole Bill Doggett thing. You know, I got to play with Bill Willis. He passed away several years ago, but a lot of my older records had Bill Willis on the B3, and he was from King Records. He knew Bill Doggett and learned how to play organ from Bill Doggett, and so there's a lot of history that goes back, and a lot of my influences go back to that.
It's really cool to see that connection, because I didn't even know anything about it till Kim kind of schooled me when we did an interview recently, and then you just don't forget a name like that. Doggett sticks out in your mind, yeah?
Yeah.
And then when I was thinking about the artists, like we're talking about Bill Doggett here, and again, it's the great Jimmie Vaughan, who's coming to town for a series of dates starting on August 13th in Honolulu, running through the 18th in Kona. Thinking about some of the other cats who you're covering on this thing, I was just wondering how many of them have you either played with yourself or met? Like some of the other ones besides Bill, there's Etta James, Fats Domino, T-Bone Walker, Clarence Gatemouth Brown. That's just some of them.
I got to play with most of them, and I think I've seen all those people you just mentioned. I never played with Fats Domino, but I saw him play a lot. He would come to Antone's, and he would come to the Armadillo in Austin, and of course, you know, he was fabulous, and he had all those sax players, and his band played on half of the pop stuff in L.A. and New Orleans that came out in the 50s. So those guys wrote everything, those horn players and drummers and everything.
And Etta James?
And Etta James, I got to meet Etta James when I was a teenager in Dallas, and then at a gig, and then later on I got to kind of be friends with her a little bit, and did a bunch of gigs with her, and she liked me because I was from Dallas, and she had a history there, so she would talk to me, and she liked Stevie, and so we got to be quite friendly with her, and she told us that she was proud of us because we kind of carried it on a little bit,
Wow. And when you were doing those shows, you were on stage together at the same time?
Yeah.
Like a whole set or just a couple tunes?
Well, we would just, sit in, and we would be on shows together, and then we would sit in together, and then we would play and talk, and I got to introduce my mother to Etta James and
wow,
all that kind of stuff,
That's what I'm talking about. Those are the stories that sound cool on the radio, man. Thinking when you mentioned that, introducing your mom to Etta James, and you talked about first meeting her as a teenager, you said, it made me think, because I was looking on the YouTube, is your son Tyrone coming? And who is he named after?
Well, I think his mother named him after Tyrone Davis.
Okay.
The soul singer.
Right. And is he coming?
He had a popular song out at the time when he was born. So
is he coming?
No. He's doing his own thing.
Sometimes you never know if people are, bringing their. We just had Dionne Warwick. She had a bunch of people and her family in the band. It was pretty amazing. All these like grandchildren, sons, everything. So sometimes you just don't know what you're gonna be in for. I mentioned that. In the intro that you're this year, one of the things about you is you're such a you're known as a really nice guy, but you're also a really mean player who people have a lot of respect for. I see tour dates with Clapton and also Buddy Guy. Both of these guys have factored into your life in a lot of ways for a while. Can you explain how far back you go with each of them on a personal basis?
Well, when I first started playing. Of course, I didn't know either one of them, but I had their records, and so I was big time influenced by Buddy Guy. I had the Folk Festival of the Blues with Muddy Waters and Sonny Boy Williamson and all those people. Buddy Guy was playing in the band on that live record, and so that was the first album I got that had Buddy Guy on it. And then it wasn't too many years after that Cream came out, and the Yardbirds first, and then the Blues Breakers and all that stuff. A friend of mine's uncle went to England on business, and he brought back the Blues Breakers, and this friend of mine called me up and played it for me on the telephone when I was, like 14 or something. I don't know. So, it's all the same kind of music, though. So.
And when did they personally enter your life?
I think after we started making records in the Thunderbirds, we started getting on shows with Eric, and I guess that was in the 80s.
Yeah, the pictures that I've seen of you, when I tried to track back and see where did he first run into these cats, I see pictures of you and Buddy Guy. Man, both of you look so young, and you're on stage together.
Oh, I know. I met him at Antone's. Of course, I had his records way before that, but I met him at Antone's, and Buddy Guy would come and play for a week, and I'd be up there every night because we were opening the show. So
when did you first play with Eric?
I think I first played with Eric. I'm trying to remember the first time. Was in the 80s when the first Thunderbirds record came out. We went to England and we saw him play somewhere, and then we did some shows with him.
You're so understated about it, but this is the guy, Jimmie Vaughan, who was just playing the Royal Albert Hall earlier this year with Clapton. It's just like what is it? Or would you call that a friendship? Or because it's just you do so much stuff with him, and then give us some kind of highlight from that evening. The pictures look phenomenal.
Well, it's a beautiful place to play. It sounds fabulous in there, and. Well, you know what happens when I meet all these guys that are my heroes and everything, and get to play with them and actually know them for a long time and everything is, when you go out on stage, your shield still comes up and you play, and then when you go home, you go, man, I just played with Eric Clapton. But while it's happening, you have to take care of yourself.
That's good, though. That's some insight into it. You just revealed a little bit more of it because you understate it, and I'm thinking, man, it's amazing, this guy's life, the kinds of things that you do. I mean, here it is. We're talking about your current life. This isn't like stuff that happened 30, 40 years ago. This is stuff that happened last week and that you're doing, coming up. And well,
it's very exciting to what I get to do and play with my band and make records and travel around and play for everyone, and we get to meet people that like Eric Clapton and Buddy Guy, who are my heroes. So it's incredible.
No, it is.
I don't know what to say.
No, I mean, it is incredible, especially, like I said, at this point in your career, and you're doing your bit, you're playing your music, you've got your boys out there. It's a major thing for you. Now, with this Buddy Guy, it's like it's you and Charlie Musselwhite and Buddy doing a whole tour together. When you're not on stage, do you spend time with these guys? I mean, is it the kind of thing, like, what are some off-stage memories with these guys that just stick out?
Basically, these guys are they're real normal, friendly guys who are just having a good time,
Right.
So, it's probably not as far out and glamorous as you might think. It's just normal people that get to play. I don't even know how to explain it. But the guy is a sweet guy, and he knows my kids, and I know his kids, and same, with Charlie and his wife, and I've known him for quite a while, so.
It's remarkable, these connections, and one of the ways that I think it factors, a great way that shows the kind of cat that you are, you got to be in the Louisiana Gator Boys in the Blues Brothers 2000. Now, for folks, when you think about being asked to be part of that all-star cast, and you think about your legacy and your own personal career, and if people don't know who was in this band, this is just some of the people he was on stage with: Eric Clapton, B.B. King, Dr. John, Billy Preston, Steve Winwood, Lou Rawls, Isaac Hayes, Bo Diddley, Clarence Clemens, Jack DeJohnette, Joshua Redman, Coco Taylor, Charlie Musselwhite, who we were mentioning, Gary U.S. Bonds. I mean, do you remember when that opportunity first came, and can you reflect on that? Again, equally, talk about heroes, but also just an acknowledgement of your own craft.
Well, yeah, I remember it. It would be kind of hard to turn down a thing like that, even though if it was going to be a corny movie, So it was great because we got to go and hang out and catch up with everybody. So a lot of times you just go out, it's like meeting your old friends at a car show or something, You see them, a couple of times a year, maybe if you're lucky, and everybody just kind of catches up and on everything and sits back there and, talks to everyone. And it's pretty normal, though.
Isaac Hayes, how many times had your paths crossed before that movie?
Well, I've only met Isaac Hayes that one time.
Okay, so there we go. So it did bring you that. That's special. That's special.
So, a lot of times you just go up and you say, hey, nice to meet you. You don't really expect them to know who you are or anything like that. You just,
But in other cases, there are people you've worked with, like Bo Diddley. How many times had you interacted with him prior to that?
Well, I've actually, in the 70s, my band backed up Bo Diddley. So he came to Austin, and we were the band. He didn't know us until he got there. But we were all prepared, and we knew all his stuff and everything, and we tried to do a good job for him.
That must have been a special experience,
It's incredible to meet Bo Diddley, okay?
I mean, because I've seen him, so God bless him, up watching over us, but he had such a mouth, and he did such an entertaining show. You didn't know what he was going to say. You didn't know what he was going to play. He rocked it so hard. Tell us the story of when you first, what a neat thing. You get to be his backing band. Yeah.
Well, it was just... one thing that you always realize when you're around him, he's Bo Diddley and you're not. But I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Bo Diddley was like some spaceship captain from outer space or something. I don't know. He was Bo Diddley.
And you did it for more than one gig?
We did a couple of nights that time, and I've met him over the years, and been on shows with him. And
what a cool thing. Your life.
I remember, going out and buying his records and, having his records at my house when I was a teenager and playing them on the stereo and tripping,
Right. And then just a few years later.
A lot of times you meet these heroes of you, and you never thought you would, so.
That's a good point, because you start out humbly just as a fan, and you're playing it, and
you're a fan, and then you meet them, and
that's a very good point.
You're still a fan.
Yep, hopefully, right? If it works out right, if it works out right. How did you get to be close with Dennis Quaid? I see he's a friend.
I think, I was in a movie with him.
Great Balls of Fire.
Yeah, and he called and wanted me to be the guitar player in the movie, and I was like, okay, and then we met, and then. He would, before that movie, though, he would come around. He's from Texas. So he would come around to our gigs, and he's always been a music fan and a fan of Jerry Lee and all that kind of stuff, all that rock and roll and R&B and everything. So
that tilt-a-whirl kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you also, that's not your only movie kind of thing. You starred in The Money Pit with Tom Hanks in The Cheap Girls.
Yeah, I don't even remember much about that. That was... What movie was that?
It was called The Money Pit.
Okay. Or what, did we just have a song in it? Or used to, they would put, the record company would place singles in movies, and that was a big way, before MTV and all that, and I don't even know what they have now, but there was a time when if you could get if the record company could get your song in a big movie, that was
a big deal.
A big deal, and they would promote it.
I think this was more you just acting. You guys, you and the band were like...
I think we played ourselves.
Exactly, kind of thing, right. That way they gave you a weird name called the Cheap Girls was the name of the band, but it was like you guys actually in the movie. You know,
I don't remember too much about it.
It's okay. You've done a lot. You've had a great life and career. Like you said, sometimes you just got to pinch yourself. You can't remember it all. You can't be faulted for that.
The point is I'm still having a lot of fun, and it's all about the music and going and doing the gig, and everybody's dancing and having a good time, you know.
Well, you bring a lot of joy to people, and you've done it for a very, very long time. And in fact, you've had a connection to this town, you know, in 1984. You've done a lot of stuff here, as you told me before. I mean, you've come here and studied for months on end, right?
I've always been a big hula steel guitar fan, and I love all that stuff. I never got very good at it, but I got to where I could play a little bit, and I would take lessons. I got to take lessons from Jerry Bird for a while, and I'm just a big fan of all that music, you know.
And you've had special times here in town, though, too. I was looking on YouTube, 1984. I wonder if you have memories. You did a really special gig here with your brother, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and Jeff Beck. It's archived online. It looks like it's a private gig at the CBS Sony Records convention. Any recollection of that?
Yeah, I remember, you know, playing. Well, that was back when they had big conventions. I don't even know if they still have them.
I don't think they do.
But... you know, all the artists on that label would show up and do a set and mix and mingle, and it was, you know, it was a promotional thing, you know.
Right.
Trying to talk the record company into promoting you, and they were scheming and, you know, all that.
Was that your first? How many times had you already been with Jeff Beck? You didn't even look moved by it at the time in the video.
No, I've seen Jeff Beck play, and of course I've always been a big Jeff Beck fan. So.
Was that your first time playing with him?
No.
So
I think I'd played before.
Yeah, you look like, that's what I'm saying. It didn't look like you were starstruck or anything. And that's kind of an interesting thing because you mentioned Yardbirds, and we've talked about Eric, and you've played with Jeff. Have you ever played with Jimmy Page?
I've never played with Jimmy Page, no.
But as you were saying, you're still out there doing so much these days.
I played with Robert Plant.
I was going to say, just this year, right?
Yeah, and... When we first had our record deal and we came to London, we used to play at a couple of little places there in London, and I remember Jimmy Page and Robert Plant came to see us a couple of times because they liked our band. So. Oh,
neat. That's a very special thing. You know, we mentioned your brother, and we haven't really talked about him at all. A curious thing I've never heard you mention before was, when did you and Stevie first, one of the things that people loved about you guys together is occasionally you do this bit where you'd have one guitar and the two of you playing it together. When did you first do something like that? Who thought of it? And tell us a little story about developing that.
Well, I have to think back... well, I'm 4 years older, so I got a guitar and started playing, and then Stevie basically watched me learn how to play, and then I would set it down, and then he would play, and you know, we had the same bedroom and a one record player, and if I brought a record home and tried to learn it, he was right there, you know. So. That was what we did, you know, when we were home. We were trying to figure out Lonnie Mac's new record or, you know, and a lot of others.
When did you start touching the thing at the same time, though?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, we had one little bedroom with one record player, and I had a guitar, so I would play the guitar, and then I would set it down, and he would pick it up. So I started it because I'm the oldest.
Yeah. No, cool. It's just neat to have watched, to see the two of you both playing one guitar. I guess it would be a double neck, right? Or something like that he would do that?
Well, when we got the double neck, it allowed us both to, you know, play at the same time. And we used to do that on one guitar.
With one neck, you're saying?
One neck.
With just one neck, you're saying?
Yeah, two people can play one neck if you...
And
if you're careful.
And that's a good way of putting it. You're funny.
But we used to do it for fun. And then when the double neck came up, it was like, I wonder if we can do this. So.
And you were just teenagers doing that when you started?
Yeah.
As we go to wrap it up with you, of all these kinds of encounters you've had, what is the most starstruck moment where perhaps you were just caught off guard to experience
Well,
it?
it's all like that. I mean, every time we go to a crossroads and play, it's not that it's Eric Clapton. It's Eric Clapton plus all these other people. And it's really hard to put to words, but, it never gets old. And then, there's always somebody that shows up that you haven't met. And you go, I had your record. I remember when you came out with so-and-so. First and foremost, I'm a fan. And that's what happens backstage, I think.
At that thing in particular, you're saying, huh? That Crossroads.
Yeah.
Which is coming up.
The Crossroads backstage is just everybody sitting around,
Right, it's very informal, but
yes.
That's been a great outlet, you're saying, for you over the years, getting to be part of that.
Yes, and a real. I want to thank Eric for putting me on the show every year. So every time,
Yeah, it says a lot. It really does say a lot about you. And all these other cats who enjoy your playing, and like the Foo Fighters encounter that you had recently as well.
Yeah. We did that. It goes on and on and on. So hopefully it's not over.
It's nowhere near over for you, brother. I don't think that's happening at all. It's the great Jimmie Vaughan.
So you're going to come to the gig?
I'm hoping to come to the gig. I was hoping if you would at all be willing to do it. I'd love to record a thing with you in person. I've done phoners with you, but never ever gotten it.
Absolutely.
You do a short follow-up interview at the venue?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'd love that. It would mean the world to me.
I look forward to it.
You are an animal over there. Jerry Bird would be giving you high fives. High fives, my friend.
Well, I look forward to going there, and I can't wait to see you.
I can't wait to see you either. I'm giving you a hug and a high five, Jimmie Vaughan. Thank you so much for doing this, my brother.
Okay, buddy. Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye-bye. Aloha, one and all. It's guitarist Jimmie Vaughan with my friend Dave Lawrence.